Welcome to a space where faith meets real life and growth gets uncomfortable. This isn't surface level motivation. It's truth that stretches you, challenges you, and asks you to show up differently. If you're ready to stop avoiding the work and start becoming who God's been calling you to be, stay.
My beloved, lean in for a moment. I don't know what you walked through this year. I don't know what tried to break you, silence you, or convince you that your story was finished. But I came to tell you something heaven has been whispering about you. There is a shift coming, not the kind you scroll past, not the kind you hope for but never touch. I'm talking about a divine interruption, a holy turning, a moment where everything that felt scattered suddenly starts aligning. And 2026, oh, you better get ready, because 2026 is not just another year on the calendar. This is the year where God pulls you out of survival mode and pushes you into becoming. This is the year where the things that used to intimidate you start bowing under the authority God placed inside you. This is the year where your wounds stop being your weakness and start becoming your wisdom. I'm not here to hype you. I'm here to prepare you, because when God decides it's your turning point, no enemy, no fear, no insecurity, and no past version of you can stop what he's about to release. So take a breath, open your heart, and posture your spirit, because what's coming for you in 2026 is bigger than the battles behind you. Let's step into it together. When God calls you into a new season, the greatest challenge is rarely the new thing itself. The greatest challenge is releasing the version of yourself that survived the last season. You cannot carry the weight of who you used to be into the space where God is trying to elevate you. So many of us are praying for transformation while clinging to the identity that was shaped by wounds, disappointments, and survival instincts. But 2026 is not inviting you to survive. It is inviting you to evolve. And evolution demands release. Evolution demands surrender. Evolution demands that you stop treating your past as if it has permission to narrate your future. There are patterns, attitudes, fears, and habits that got you through the valley, but will suffocate you on the mountain. So when we talk about 2026 being a turning point, we're talking about a spiritual shift that begins within you long before it shows up around you. There is a version of you God has been developing quietly beneath the surface. You felt the tension, you felt the stretching, you felt the discomfort of trying to fit into spaces you once belonged to but no longer align with. You felt the uneasiness of staying where you are while sensing that something in you is outgrowing what's familiar. That is not confusion, that is spiritual labor. That is God expanding your capacity and preparing the framework of your internal world to sustain the blessings, responsibilities, and opportunities he is releasing in 2026. But here's the truth most people don't want to acknowledge. Expansion always requires letting something go. Sometimes it's a mindset. Sometimes it's an excuse. Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes it's the image you built of yourself that kept you protected but never truly fulfilled. Whatever it is for you, 2026 will confront it. God is not calling you to become a better version of your old self. He is calling you to step into a version that you've never met before, a version he designed, a version your past cannot define, a version your mistakes cannot disqualify, a version your fears cannot limit unless you allow them to. And the only way to access that version is to release the grip you have on the identity forged in broken seasons. You don't owe your past self loyalty when your future self is calling. Some people stay stuck not because God didn't open a door, but because they refuse to walk out of the one that imprisoned them. 2026 is not the year for hesitation. It is not the year for shrinking. It is not the year for rehearsing the old narrative that says you are unworthy, unready, or unable. This is the year where God calls you to shed the version of you that was built on survival tactics and rise into the version of you built on purpose. You may not realize it yet, but there have been seeds planted in you over the last few years that are beginning to break open. Seeds of courage that grew in the dark places. Seeds of wisdom that grew in the painful places. Seeds of faith that grew when you had nothing left but the promise that God had not forgotten you. Those seeds are now demanding room to grow. But growth requires space, and space requires release. This is why some relationships feel tight. This is why some environments feel draining. This is why some habits feel suffocating. It's because you are expanding spiritually while trying to remain emotionally and mentally anchored to an old identity that cannot stretch with you. God does not place new wine in old wineskins because the old cannot contain what the new requires. In the same way, He cannot release the fullness of your 2026 calling into a version of you that is cluttered with outdated beliefs, unhealed wounds, and limiting stories. Your transformation requires clear space. There are things you've prayed for that you are now spiritually ready to receive, but emotionally, you're still trying to negotiate who you have to become in order to carry them. You want the blessing, but you also want to maintain the comfort of the old version of you. But comfort is not your calling. Growth is. Comfort is not your destiny. Alignment is. Comfort will never demand your faith, but purpose always will. In 2026, your elevation will not be triggered by outside circumstances. It will be triggered by internal decisions. The decision to stop apologizing for your growth. The decision to stop playing small to keep others comfortable. The decision to stop replaying the trauma that shaped you and start embracing the purpose that's calling you. The decision to stop delaying your healing because healing requires honesty. The decision to stop identifying with the broken places God has already delivered you from. When you choose these decisions consistently, you begin to step out of who you were and move toward who you were designed to become. Some people may not understand your transformation. Some may question it. Some may resist it because your growth challenges their comfort. But you cannot shrink your destiny to soothe someone else's insecurity. You cannot mute your calling to remain in circles that were never meant to witness your next level. You cannot dim your light to satisfy people who benefited from your darkness. Releasing who you were is not betrayal. It is obedience. It is alignment. It is maturity. It is spiritual stewardship. And if God is asking you to release it, it's because He's preparing to give you something greater. Think back to the moments when you outgrew things you once prayed for. That relationship you thought you couldn't live without. The one that eventually taught you what love should not feel like. That job you begged God for. The one that later revealed its purpose was only to develop your discipline, not become your destination. That version of yourself who fought battles no one knew about, the one who did the best they could with what they had. Be grateful for that version, honor that version, but don't stay loyal to a version of you that no longer reflects who God is calling you to be. Release them with gratitude. Release them with peace. Release them without guilt, because a version of you emerging in 2026 is stronger, wiser, more focused, more spiritually grounded, more emotionally intelligent, and more aligned than anything you've ever experienced. There is a divine acceleration that happens when you stop resisting your own evolution. Suddenly opportunities appear that once seemed unreachable. Suddenly clarity comes where confusion used to reign. Suddenly healing emerges in places where pain once lived. Suddenly boldness rises in rooms where silence once held you hostage. Suddenly you begin to see that everything you released was making room for everything you prayed for. Release is not loss. It is preparation. Release is not weakness, it is strength. Release is not rejection, it is redirection. And the moment you embrace this truth, 2026 begins to align with the version of you God intended to rise. This year will reveal what happens when you finally give God permission to rewrite the script you were afraid to let go of. It will reveal what happens when you stop negotiating your worth with people who cannot afford to value you. It will reveal what happens when you stop clinging to identities that were built in seasons of fear rather than seasons of faith. It will reveal what happens when you stop rehearsing who hurt you and start embracing who healed you. It will reveal what happens when you release the version of you shaped by survival and step into the version shaped by destiny. It will reveal what happens when you stop living according to the memory of your past and start living according to the vision of your future. 2026 will demand discipline, vision, and spiritual alignment, and not in the soft, inspirational way people often imagine when they hear those words. This won't be the kind of year where you can coast on good intentions or ride on the momentum of the emotional highs you felt during moments of motivation. This is a year where every blessing God releases will require stewardship. Every opportunity will require preparation. Every door will require responsibility, and every elevation will require you to be anchored in something deeper than excitement. Discipline, vision, and spiritual alignment are not optional ingredients for what God wants to build in you. They are the foundation. They are the scaffolding around your destiny. Without them, even the most beautiful gifts can collapse under pressure. With them, you become unshakable, unmovable, and unstoppable in what God has assigned to your hands. Discipline is the spiritual muscle that turns prayers into action. It is the bridge between what you believe and what you become. You can pray for transformation, but if your habits contradict your prayer, you will find yourself stuck in cycles instead of stepping into progress. Discipline is God's way of teaching you to partner with Him, not to replace Him, but to cooperate with the things He has already ordained for your life. There are blessings He is ready to release in 2026 that can only be sustained by a disciplined version of you, not the version that procrastinates, doubts, or entertains distractions, the disciplined version of you. The one who understands that consistency is a weapon, that structure is a strategy, that focus is a form of warfare. And when you cultivate discipline, you begin to walk differently. You begin to think differently. You begin to filter your decisions through purpose instead of emotion. There will be moments in 2026 where your feelings will attempt to sabotage your future. Your feelings will tell you to stay in bed when your purpose says to rise. Your feelings will tell you to quit when your assignment demands perseverance. Your feelings will tell you that you are overwhelmed when God is calling you to stand firm. Discipline allows you to choose destiny over feeling. It gives you the strength to show up even when you don't feel ready. It trains your mind to obey purpose instead of fear. It helps you build a life that isn't controlled by emotional turbulence, but guided by spiritual conviction. And when you master discipline, not perfectly, but intentionally, you become a vessel God can trust with more opportunities, more influence, more breakthroughs, more territory. Not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful. Vision is the second requirement, and it is just as vital. Vision is not imagination. Vision is not daydreaming. Vision is not a Pinterest board of the life you hope to have. Vision is prophetic clarity. It is the ability to see beyond what is happening and discern what God is forming. Vision is your internal compass, the spiritual GPS that guides your decisions, your relationships, your priorities, and your sacrifices. Without vision, 2026 will feel chaotic because you will be pulled in every direction by distractions that masquerade as opportunities. Without vision, you will end up busy but not productive, active but not aligned, moving but not progressing. Vision forces you to define what God is calling you to build so you can identify everything that does not support that assignment. When you have vision, you stop apologizing for your boundaries because your boundaries protect your blueprint. You stop entertaining people who drain your focus because your energy has a destination. You stop wasting time in environments that feed your insecurities instead of your purpose. Vision turns your no into an act of obedience. Vision turns your discomfort into development. Vision turns your waiting season into training. And one of the most powerful things about vision is that it gives you endurance. When you know where God has taken you, the delays don't break you. The detours don't discourage you. The disappointments don't define you, because vision reminds you that what you see now is not all there is. And what you feel now is not the end of the story. This is why the enemy attacks your clarity more than anything. If he can distort your vision, he can derail your purpose. If he can cloud your perception of who you are, he can convince you to settle. If he can blind you to what God is doing, he can distract you into stagnation. But in 2026, God is sharpening your spiritual sight. He is refining the way you see yourself, the way you see your assignment, and the way you see his hand guiding you. Vision will require you to trust God even when the path doesn't look like the promise. Vision will require you to walk with God instead of walking with the opinions of people. Vision will require you to believe in the unseen even when the seen contradicts it. The clearer your vision becomes, the more intentional your choices will become, because you will no longer make decisions from a place of insecurity, but from a place of prophetic insight. The third requirement is spiritual alignment, and it is the anchor of the entire year. You can have discipline, you can have vision, but without alignment, you will be working hard in the wrong direction. Alignment is the ability to synchronize your steps with God's timing, God's voice, and God's purpose. Alignment means you stop moving according to your own urgency and start moving according to God's strategy. It means you stop asking God to bless your plans and start asking him to guide your preparation. Alignment is not passive. It is intentional. It is choosing prayer over panic. It is choosing surrender over control. It is choosing obedience over convenience. And when you operate in alignment, everything begins to flow differently. There are doors that will open easily when you are aligned because they were designed for you. There are connections that will appear naturally because they were assigned to your path. There are opportunities that will fit effortlessly because they were crafted for your capacity. Alignment does not eliminate effort, but it eliminates unnecessary struggle. It removes the exhaustion that comes from forcing what God never endorsed. In 2026, alignment will separate the things that feel heavy because they are out of season from the things that stretch you because they are part of your calling. It will teach you to discern the difference between good ideas and God instructions. Good ideas will impress people. God instructions will transform your life. Alignment also requires you to tune your spiritual ear. There will be moments where God whispers instead of shouting, and you will need to be sensitive enough to hear him. Moments where he redirects you quietly, and you will need the humility to follow without explanation. Moments where he asks you to release something that made sense but no longer carries his grace. Moments where he guides you into opportunities that don't look like what you expected, but are exactly what your spirit needs. When you are aligned, divine timing becomes a rhythm you can trust. Even when things seem delayed, you know they are being prepared. Even when things seem slow, you know they are being strengthened. Even when things seem uncertain, you know God is still ordering your steps. Discipline, vision, and alignment also work together. Discipline trains your habits. Vision trains your decisions. Alignment trains your spirit. Discipline gives you structure. Vision gives you direction. Alignment gives you discernment. All three create a version of you that can sustain everything God is releasing in 2026. Without discipline, you lose consistency. Without vision, you lose clarity. Without alignment, you lose purpose. But when all three are active, you move with authority. You move with intention. You move with peace. You move with the confidence of someone who knows that God is not only calling you higher, but equipping you for the journey. One of the reasons 2026 will require this trifold foundation is because the level God is elevating you to will expose anything that is unstable within you. Blessings reveal what discipline hides. Opportunities reveal what vision clarifies. Responsibility reveals what alignment strengthens. When God enlarges your territory, He also enlarges your character. Not because He wants to burden you, but because He wants to protect you. What He gives you is too valuable to be mishandled by an unprepared version of you. This year is training ground. This year is refinement. This year is spiritual architecture. God is rebuilding the way you think, the way you respond, the way you commit, and the way you prioritize. There will be mornings where discipline feels like sacrifice. There will be days where vision feels like stretching. There will be seasons where alignment feels like surrendering control. But every act of discipline becomes a seed. Every moment of clarity becomes a map. Every step of alignment becomes a doorway. What you invest in your spiritual, mental, and emotional development in 2026 will lay the blueprint for everything you build afterward. This is not just a year of effort, it's a year of structure, a year of intentionality, a year where God is preparing you to live at a level you prayed for but weren't yet ready to sustain. 2026 will open doors only if you dare to walk through them with courage. And that truth carries a weight many people underestimate. Opportunities are not passive gifts, they are invitations. An open door does not guarantee transformation, it guarantees potential. And potential requires partnership. God can open the door, but He will not drag you through it. He will not force you to outgrow your fear. He will not override your hesitation. He will not shrink your calling to fit the limits of your comfort. The threshold of every open door demands a version of you that is willing to move even while afraid, willing to obey even when uncertain, willing to trust even when the path ahead is not fully visible. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to proceed in spite of fear. And in 2026, the magnitude of the doors God will open will require a level of spiritual bravery that rises above every insecurity, every doubt, and every internal narrative that once convinced you to shrink. It is easy to pray for open doors, but it is harder to accept what they require, because walking through a door means leaving something behind. It means leaving behind the identity that felt safe, leaving behind the environments that were predictable, leaving behind the relationships that kept you comfortable but not accountable, leaving behind the voices that validated your limitations more than your possibility. Every open door requires a shedding. Every opportunity requires a stretching. Every elevation requires an exit from the rooms that no longer hold your assignment. This is why courage is essential. It gives you the strength to release what is familiar in order to embrace what is necessary. Some people never step into their destiny, not because the door didn't open, but because they chose familiarity over faith. In 2026, courage will not look like loud declarations or emotional hype. It will look like quiet obedience. It will look like consistent action. It will look like saying yes when everything in you wants to negotiate. It will look like showing up even when you don't feel qualified. It will look like trusting that if God opened a door, He also prepared you to walk through it, even if you don't recognize the preparation as preparation. Sometimes the preparation came in the form of heartbreak that taught you resilience. Sometimes it came through closed doors that taught you discernment. Sometimes it came through difficult seasons that taught you endurance. Sometimes it came through isolation that taught you identity. Everything you endured has equipped you for the doors that are opening, but it will take courage to believe that you are ready. Courage also requires acknowledging the quiet fears that live beneath the surface. Not just the fear of failure, but the fear of success, the fear of responsibility, the fear of being seen, the fear of losing people, the fear of living up to a calling that feels bigger than your capacity. Many people pray for a breakthrough while secretly fearing the weight that comes with breakthrough. They ask God for more, but fear being overwhelmed by more. They want influence, but fear visibility. They want abundance, but fear discipline. They want purpose, but fear accountability. Courage is not pretending those fears don't exist. It is choosing to move forward regardless of them. It is choosing to trust that God would not bring you to a door that he did not equip you to walk through. In some seasons, courage requires speaking up. In others, it requires letting go. In some seasons, it requires taking a leap. In others, it requires standing still when everything around you pressures you to rush. Courage is fluid. It adapts to the demands of your assignment. It grows as you grow. And the doors opening in 2026 are not doors of convenience. They are doors of calling. They are doors that align you with a higher version of yourself. They are doors that stretch your character and expand your perspective. They are doors that draw you out of complacency and position you in purpose. But they will not be entered accidentally. They must be entered intentionally. One of the greatest battles you will face at the threshold of an open door is the temptation to shrink back into old patterns, the temptation to believe the old version of you instead of embracing the new one, the temptation to listen to voices that remind you of your failures instead of voices that remind you of your potential, the temptation to wait until you feel ready, even though readiness is often the result of movement, not the requirement for movement. Courage is a decision you make at the door. It is not something you wait to feel. It is something you choose to embody. Some of the doors in 2026 will require you to walk alone, not because God wants you isolated, but because certain transitions cannot be made with crowds. Some people cannot walk with you into your next season because their presence is tied to your past season. Their opinions, their fears, their expectations, their limitations, all of that can sabotage your confidence at the door. This is why courage also requires discernment. You must discern who can walk with you and who must remain where they are. You must discern which relationships are assignments and which ones are distractions. You must discern which opportunities are divine and which ones are detours. You must discern which voices to silence and which ones to amplify. Courage is not just about motion, it is about clarity. Walking through an open door will also expose the areas of your life that still need healing. It will reveal insecurities you thought you had grown past. It will surface fears you thought you had conquered. Elevation exposes what survival seasons allowed you to avoid. But this exposure is not punishment, it is refinement. God reveals what he intends to heal, and he heals what he intends to use. So when you walk through a door and suddenly feel the weight of new pressure, do not interpret it as a sign that you are unqualified. Interpret it as proof that God is preparing you to carry the fullness of your assignment. Pressure is not a sign that you are in the wrong place. It is often confirmation that you are in the right one. One of the greatest challenges of courage is embracing uncertainty. Open doors rarely reveal what is on the other side. God often shows you the door, but not the room. He shows you the calling, but not the full journey. He shows you the promise, but not the process. This uncertainty is intentional. If you knew everything, you wouldn't need faith. If you saw everything, you wouldn't rely on his guidance. Courage is choosing to cross the threshold even when you cannot predict the outcome. It is choosing to believe God's character more than your own understanding. It is choosing to trust his timing more than your own timeline. In 2026, courage will also look like redefining the way you respond to setbacks. Every open door comes with challenges, not because God is testing you to punish you, but because elevation requires spiritual muscle strong enough to sustain what you are stepping into. Courage teaches you to interpret setbacks differently. Instead of seeing them as rejection, you begin to see them as redirection. Instead of seeing them as failure, you begin to see them as feedback. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, you begin to see them as opportunities for refinement. Courage transforms the way you process adversity. It allows you to keep walking when others would quit. It allows you to keep believing when others would doubt. It allows you to keep building when others would surrender. Courage gives you spiritual stamina. Another dimension of courage is authenticity. Walking through new doors requires you to show up as the version of yourself God designed, not the version people expect.